I went to the beach that day for the same reason I always went. For the silence. For the vast, empty canvas of the horizon where my thoughts could unspool without getting tangled in the sharp corners of other people's lives. My life was a meticulously curated collection of quiet routines, and the beach was my cathedral, a place of solitary worship. I didn't come here looking for anyone. I certainly didn't come here looking for him. He was a fixture, a landmark of annoyance I had learned to navigate. Every weekend, like a loud, unwelcome tide, he and his friends would arrive. They'd claim the stretch of sand nearest the good waves, their laughter a barrage against my peace, their music a thumping, alien heartbeat against the rhythm of the surf. He was the center of that noisy constellation. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-bleached hair that fell into his eyes and skin tanned the color of old leather. I'd watch him from the safety of my towel, half hidden behind my book and sunglasses. He moved with an uncomplicated confidence that felt like a personal affront. He'd throw a football with a perfect, lazy spiral. He'd charge into the waves, his body a powerful silhouette against the blinding sun, and it always felt like he was conquering the ocean itself. To me, he was just a picture of everything I was not: loud, carefree, effortlessly social. He was a disruption. A beautiful, infuriating disruption. My world was built of quiet observation. I was a writer, or at least, I was trying to be. I collected details, hoarded moments, translated the world into words on a page. And he, in his own way, became a character study. I knew the way the muscles in his back coiled before he threw the ball. I knew the specific shade of blue of his board shorts. I knew that he had a small, jagged scar above his right eyebrow that was only visible when the light hit it just so. I knew these things because observing was safer than participating. He was a story I was writing from a great, unbridgeable distance. That day started like any other. I found my usual spot, far enough from the main path to feel secluded. I laid out my towel, set up my chair, and opened my book. The sun was a warm hand on my skin. The waves whispered their endless secrets. For an hour, it was perfect. It was my sanctuary. Then I heard them. The crunch of sand, the boisterous calls. My stomach tightened into its familiar knot of irritation. I didn't have to look up to know it was him. His presence had a weight, a gravitational pull that warped the air around him. I lowered my book just enough to see them setting up their kingdom of coolers and umbrellas. And there he was. Laughing at something one of his friends said, the sound carrying on the wind, sharp and clear. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I focused on the words on the page, on the rhythmic crash of the surf, on anything but the vibrant, loud life happening just 100 yards away. But it was like trying to ignore a bonfire. The heat, the light, the sound, it all pulls at you. My carefully constructed piece began to fray at the edges. He was a splash of chaotic color on my muted gray canvas. The sky began to change before I noticed. The brilliant, endless blue started to bruise at the edges, a deep, moody purple spreading from the west. The wind picked up, whipping sand into my face, turning the pages of my book with frantic, invisible fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of ozone and rain. The first fat drops of water hit the sand with a hiss. His group scattered quickly. A flurry of towels and panicked shouts as they gathered their things and sprinted for the parking lot. I packed more slowly, methodically, a strange calm settling over me. I liked storms. They were the only thing louder than my own thoughts. As I folded my chair, the sky opened up. Rain fell not in drops, but in solid, wind-driven sheets. The world dissolved into a blur of gray. By the time I reached my car, I was soaked to the bone, my hair plastered to my skull. I threw my wet gear onto the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel, shivering. I turned the key. A click. A pathetic whir. Nothing. I tried again. And again. The engine wouldn't turn over. Just that same dying groan. A cold dread, far colder than the rain, seeped into my bones. The parking lot was empty now, save for one other vehicle. A big, dark blue truck, its engine rumbling softly, headlights cutting twin beams through the deluge. His truck. Of course. I sat there for a long moment, water dripping from my nose, the windows fogging up around me. I could wait it out. The storm would pass. Someone would eventually come. I didn't need his help. I did not want his help. The thought of it was humiliating. The quiet, invisible man having to ask the loud, golden sun god for a lifeline. But the rain was getting harder, the wind rocking my small car. The battery was clearly dead. My phone, I realized with a fresh wave of panic, was at 5%. Waiting was not an option. My heart felt like a frantic, trapped bird against my ribs. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped back out into the storm. Each step toward his truck felt like a mile. The rain was so loud I could barely think. I reached his window and hesitated, my hand hovering for a second before I knocked. He rolled the window down, and a blast of warm air and the faint scent of coffee hit me. He looked surprised to see me. I guess in his world, people like me didn't exist. We were just part of the scenery. "Problem?" he asked. His voice was deeper up close, less of a shout and more of a low rumble. "My car," I managed, shouting over the wind. "It won't start." "The battery, I think." He just nodded, his expression unreadable. For a second, I thought he was going to say no, to just roll up his window and leave me there. The ultimate dismissal. He just looked at me, rain plastering my shirt to my chest, my teeth starting to chatter. "Get in," he said finally. It wasn't a question. No point in both of us getting soaked. "I'll take a look." I walked around to the passenger side, my mind a blank static of shock and embarrassment. The inside of the truck was a revelation. It was clean, organized. Not the mess of empty cans and sand-crusted gear I'd expected. It smelled like coffee and salt and something else, something clean and warm that was just him. He got out and pulled his hood up, moving into the rain with that same infuriating, unbothered grace. I watched through the windshield as he worked on my car, his broad back to me. The rain slicked his jacket, but he didn't seem to notice. He was competent, focused. Not the careless beach boy I'd imagined. This was a man who knew how to fix things. After a few minutes, he came back and slid into the driver's seat, shaking water from his hair like a dog. "It's dead," he said, stating the obvious. "Completely shot. You're not going anywhere in that tonight." "Right," I said, my voice small. Could you maybe give me a ride into town? I can call a cab from there." He started the truck's engine again and turned to look at me. And really look at me, for the first time. His eyes were a startlingly clear gray, like the sea just after a storm. I felt pinned by his gaze, completely exposed. "Town's a half-hour away, and the radio says the coast road is starting to flood." "It's not safe," he said. The statement was flat, matter of fact. "I've got a place just up the road. A small cabin. You can wait out the storm there. I'll drive you back in the morning." My brain screamed no. No, no, no. A cabin. With him. The thought was terrifying, absurd. It was an intimacy I was completely unprepared for. But what was the alternative? Sitting in a dead car all night. Trying to get a signal on a dying phone in the middle of a gale. "Okay," I heard myself say. The word felt like it belonged to someone else. "Thank you." He just nodded again and put the truck in gear. We drove in silence, the only sound the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers and the roar of the storm outside. The road was barely visible. Trees bent low under the force of the wind. It felt like we were the only two people left in the world, sealed inside this warm, rumbling machine. The cabin was small, tucked away behind a stand of hardy, wind-stunted pines. It was dark wood, unassuming, with a wide porch. He killed the engine and the sudden silence was deafening. "Here we are," he said. Inside, it was simple, rustic. A main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, a worn leather sofa. It wasn't a party house. It was quiet. It was lived in. Books were stacked on a low shelf, their spines creased. A thick, knitted blanket was folded over the back of an armchair. This place didn't fit the man I thought he was. At all. "There are towels in the bathroom," he said, gesturing down a short hall. "And I've got some sweats you can borrow." "You're shivering." I hadn't even realized I was. My whole body was trembling, a mix of cold and pure, unadulterated anxiety. I just nodded, unable to form words, and escaped to the bathroom. The clothes he'd left on the hook were ridiculously big on me. A gray sweatshirt and dark sweatpants. They were soft, worn from countless washes, and they smelled faintly of him. That clean, salt and laundry soap scent. Wearing them felt like a transgression, a theft of some impossible intimacy. When I came out, he had a fire going in the fireplace. The room was filled with a flickering, golden light. He was kneeling on the hearth, poking at the logs. The firelight caught the highlights in his hair and carved his profile in shadow and flame. I saw that scar over his eye again, a tiny silver fault line in his tanned skin. I noticed the calluses on his hands as he handled the poker, the rough, capable texture of his skin. These were not the hands of a man who just played in the sun. These were the hands of a man who worked. He looked up and saw me standing there, swallowed by his clothes. A small smile touched his lips. It wasn't a smirk. It was gentle. "Better?" he asked. "Yeah. Thanks." My voice was a croak. "I'm Julian, by the way," he said, standing up and wiping his hands on his jeans. "Leo," I replied. We shook hands. His grip was firm, warm. His hand completely enveloped mine. The contact sent a jolt straight up my arm, a sudden, unexpected current of heat. I pulled my hand back too quickly. Panic flared in my chest. "Don't be weird. Just be normal." "I'll make some coffee," he said, seemingly oblivious to my internal crisis. He moved into the small kitchen area with an easy familiarity. I stood awkwardly by the fire, feeling like an intruder, an alien species in this strange, quiet habitat. This was his space. His silence. And I was in the middle of it. I watched him. He wasn't loud or boisterous here. He was quiet, efficient. He measured the coffee grounds with a focused precision. The clink of the spoon against the ceramic mug was the only sound besides the crackling fire and the howling wind. I looked around the room more closely. I saw a framed photo on the mantelpiece. An older man and woman, smiling, their arms around a much younger Julian. He looked lanky, awkward, a galaxy away from the man he was now. He came back with 2 steaming mugs and handed one to me. Our fingers brushed again as I took it. This time, I was ready for it, but the shock was just as potent. It was like touching a live wire. A warmth spread from my fingers through my whole body, a dizzying, terrifying heat. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat. "Careful, it's hot," he said. I took a sip. The coffee was strong, black. It burned my tongue, a welcome, grounding pain. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the fire. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full. Weighted. I could feel him beside me, a solid, warm presence. The sheer physical reality of him was overwhelming. "So, you're the guy with the book," he said suddenly. I nearly choked on my coffee. "What?" "Every weekend. Same spot. Same chair. Always reading," he explained, his eyes on the flames. "I see you there. I figured you were a professor or something." He saw me. The thought was staggering. I was the observer, the ghost on the edge of the scene. I wasn't supposed to be seen. "I'm a writer," I admitted. "Or trying to be." "Yeah." "What do you write?" He sounded genuinely interested. The power dynamic, the one that had existed entirely in my head, was starting to dissolve. Here, in his cabin, I wasn't just the weird, quiet guy on the beach. And he wasn't just the loud jock. We were just 2 people, trapped by a storm. "Fiction, mostly," I said, my voice gaining a little confidence. "Short stories." He nodded slowly, taking a sip of his coffee. "I'm not much of a reader," he confessed, and for the first time, he looked almost shy. "I try. But I have a hard time finishing things. My mind wanders." He gestured to the stack of books on the shelf. "Those were my dad's. He built this cabin. He could sit and read for hours." There was a sadness in his voice, a flicker of something vulnerable in his gray eyes. The confident, conquering hero of the beach was gone. In his place was someone quieter, more complicated. Someone who missed his father. He passed away a couple of years ago, Julian continued, his voice low. I've been trying to fix the place up since. He would have liked that. Suddenly, I wasn't the one with all the secrets, all the hidden depths. He was unfolding before me, layer by layer. The arrogance I'd perceived was a shield. The loudness was a performance. Here, in the quiet of his father's cabin, was someone else entirely. I was no longer the expert observer. I was just a witness. And for the first time, I felt a connection to him that had nothing to do with envy or irritation. It felt like empathy. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. He just shrugged, but the gesture was heavy. It's okay. It's just quiet out here now. And there it was. The thing we had in common. He understood the weight of silence. Maybe his was lonely, while mine was chosen, but it was a language we both spoke. The storm outside raged on, a wild symphony of wind and rain, but inside the small cabin, a different kind of storm was brewing. A quiet, intense thing was building in the space between us. We talked for hours. Or maybe it was only 1 hour. Time seemed to stretch and warp in the flickering firelight. I told him about the book I was trying to write. He told me about his job, running his family's small construction business, the pressure of living up to his father's legacy. The person I had invented, the one-dimensional character from my beach observations, was completely and utterly wrong. The real Julian was thoughtful, a little bit lonely, and carried a quiet sense of duty that was both admirable and sad. The fire burned down to glowing embers. The coffee was long gone. The storm hadn't let up. Yawning, he stretched, his arms going over his head, the gray sweatshirt pulling tight across his chest. I watched the movement, the effortless strength in it, and my breath caught in my throat. It's getting late, he said, his voice soft with fatigue. You can take the bed. I'll crash on the sofa. No, I can't do that, I protested immediately. It's your place. I'll take the sofa. Don't be ridiculous, he said, a ghost of his usual confident tone returning. The sofa's a lumpy monster. You won't get any sleep. I'm used to it. Go on, he pointed toward a closed door. Arguing felt pointless. I mumbled another thank you and retreated to the bedroom. It was as simple as the rest of the cabin. A double bed with a handmade quilt, a single wooden dresser, a window that looked out into the thrashing, dark woods. The sound of the rain was softer in here, a constant, soothing drum on the roof. I lay down on top of the quilt, still in his clothes. My mind was racing. Every single assumption I had ever made about him had been wrong. He wasn't an antagonist. He was just a person. A kind, lonely person who had offered me shelter. The air in the room still held his scent, and it was doing strange, unsettling things to my insides. My stomach was aflutter with something that wasn't anxiety. It was something else. Something terrifying and hopeful and new. I couldn't sleep. I could hear him moving around in the other room, the creak of the floorboards, the sigh of the sofa cushions as he settled in. I was intensely, painfully aware of him being just one thin wall away. Every nerve in my body felt alive, humming with a strange energy. This proximity was a kind of torture. A sweet, agonizing torture. After a long while, I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart leaped into my throat. Leo. Julian's voice was a low murmur. You awake? Yeah, I breathed. The door creaked open. He was just a silhouette in the doorway, framed by the faint glow of the dying fire. Can't sleep, he said. Mind if I? He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. My entire body went rigid. This is it. This is the moment where I say no, good night, thank you for everything. The safe response. The response that keeps my quiet, ordered world intact. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I don't mind. He came into the room and closed the door behind him, plunging us into near total darkness. I heard him move toward the bed. The mattress dipped with his weight as he sat on the edge. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The air between us was thick, charged, vibrating with everything we hadn't said. I wasn't being honest before, he said, his voice a low rumble in the dark. About seeing you on the beach. I held my breath. It wasn't just noticing you, he continued. I watched you. I know that sounds creepy, he let out a short, nervous laugh that held no humor. It's just, you always looked so calm. So self-contained. Like you had this whole world figured out inside that book. I was jealous, I think. The confession hung in the air between us. Jealous. Of me. The idea was so preposterous it almost made me laugh. He was jealous of the anxious, lonely man hiding behind a paperback novel. You've got it all wrong, I whispered. I'm a mess. That's why I come to the beach. To try and sort through the noise in my head. Maybe, he said. But you're not loud about it. My friends, they're great, but it's all noise. All the time. Sometimes I just want it to be quiet. Like you. He shifted on the bed, turning toward me. I could just make out the line of his shoulder, the shape of his head in the dark. He was so close. Southwest impossibly close. Leo, he said, and my name on his lips was a physical thing, a touch. And then his hand found mine in the dark. He didn't grab it. He just laid his hand over mine, his palm warm and rough against my knuckles. The simple, gentle contact was more devastating than 1,000 passionate words. It was an anchor in the storm, both outside and inside me. All the fear, all the anxiety, it just quieted. It was replaced by a deep, resonant hum of longing. A longing I had been burying for years. I turned my hand over and laced my fingers through his. It was a surrender. A confession of my own. He squeezed my hand gently. I could hear him breathe, a little unsteady. The silence stretched, filled with the frantic beating of my own heart. I was sure he could hear it. Slowly, he leaned closer. I felt his breath on my cheek, warm and smelling faintly of coffee. This was the precipice. The edge of a cliff I had been walking toward my whole life without ever knowing it. I could pull back. I could save myself. Or I could jump. I didn't pull back. I turned my head, and my lips brushed against his. It wasn't a movie kiss. It wasn't explosive or desperate. It was hesitant. Questioning. It was a soft, tentative exploration in the dark. His lips were chapped from the sun and the wind. He tasted of salt and coffee. It was the gentlest kiss I had ever imagined, and it undid me completely. All the walls I had so carefully built around my heart, they didn't just crumble. They evaporated. He pulled back a fraction of an inch, his forehead resting against mine. Okay, he whispered, his voice thick. Okay, I breathed back. And then I leaned in and kissed him again, and this time there was no hesitation. It was a confirmation. A validation of this strange, impossible connection that had sparked to life between two strangers in a storm. It was a kiss that said everything I could never write, everything I could never say. It was a beginning. I woke to the pale, gray light of dawn filtering through the window. For a blissful, disoriented second, I didn't know where I was. Then it all came flooding back. The storm. The cabin. Julian. My eyes snapped open. The space beside me in the bed was empty. The sheets were cold. Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed me in the chest. A sick, familiar feeling washed over me. The morning after dread. He was gone. He regretted it. Of course he regretted it. What was I thinking? I was a fool, a pathetic, lonely fool who had mistaken a moment of shared vulnerability for something more. My stomach twisted into a knot of bees. I sat up, the borrowed sweatshirt feeling like a costume of shame. The cabin was silent. Utterly, dreadfully silent. The storm had passed, and it had taken all the magic, all the impossible intimacy of the night with it. All that was left was this cold, quiet room and my own roaring self-recrimination. I swung my legs out of bed, my movements stiff, robotic. I had to get out of there. I had to get back to my car, back to my life, back to the safety of my solitude before he came back and I had to see the pity or disgust in his eyes. The silence that had felt so full last night now felt like an accusation. It was the absence of him. A hollow, aching void. I found my own clothes, still damp, folded neatly on a chair. I changed quickly, leaving his sweats in a pile on the bed. Every object in the room seemed to mock me. The quilt. The worn dresser. This was his life, his space, and I had trespassed in the most intimate way possible. And now I was being evicted. I crept out into the main room. It was empty. A note was on the small kitchen table. My heart plummeted. This was it. I had a great time, but... Note. This was a mistake, note. My hand trembled as I picked it up. Went to check the roads. Be back soon. J. It wasn't a rejection. But it wasn't reassurance, either. It was neutral, functional. The intimacy was gone. The casual initial he used felt like a deliberate step back. J, not Julian. Just a letter. An abbreviation. A distance. I sat on the edge of the lumpy sofa where he had intended to sleep, my head in my hands. The memory of the night played in my mind on a cruel loop. His voice in the dark. The warmth of his hand. The tentative, searching pressure of his lips. Had I imagined the tenderness? Had I projected all my own desperate longing onto him? He was probably just lonely. A moment of weakness in a storm. And now, in the clear light of day, he saw his mistake. He saw me. The minutes ticked by, each one a small lifetime of anxiety. I stared out the window. The world was washed clean, dripping in green. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. It was a beautiful morning, and it felt like a personal insult. I heard the rumble of his truck before I saw it. My entire body tensed. I stood up, my legs feeling weak. I needed to act normal. I needed to pretend that last night was just a thing that happened. No big deal. Just two guys, a storm. I would thank him for his hospitality, get a ride to my car, and then I would disappear from his life forever. I would go back to being the invisible man on the beach. The thought was a cold, hard stone in my gut. My solitude, once a comfort, now seemed like a life sentence. The door opened and he walked in. He stopped when he saw me, standing awkwardly in the middle of the room in my own damp clothes. He wasn't smiling. His face was a mask, his gray eyes unreadable. The easy warmth from last night was gone, replaced by a tense, guarded energy. "You're up," he said. His voice was flat. "Yeah," I said, my own voice tight. "Thanks again for everything. I'm ready to go whenever you are." I tried to sound casual, breezy. I failed spectacularly. "The road's clear," he said, not moving from the doorway. He looked from me to the neatly folded sweats on the bed in the other room, and his jaw tightened. "I got your car started. Just needed a jump. The battery will need to be replaced, but it'll get you home." "Oh. Great. Thank you." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. It was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. This was it. The recoil. The retreat into our separate corners. Last night was an anomaly, a strange fever dream. This was reality. We drove back to the beach parking lot in that same crushing silence. It was a completely different silence from the one on the drive to the cabin. That one had been filled with unspoken possibility. This one was filled with unspoken regret. I stared out the passenger window, watching the dripping trees go by, memorizing the shape of his hands on the steering wheel. I was collecting final details for a story that would never be written. He pulled up next to my car. Its engine was running, a low, healthy hum. The end of the line. I turned to him, a hollow speech of gratitude prepared on my tongue. "Well, thanks for all your help, Julian. I really appreciate." "Was it a mistake?" he cut in, his voice low and raw. He was looking straight ahead, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The question knocked the air out of my lungs. "What?" "Last night," he said, finally turning to look at me. And in his eyes, I didn't see pity or disgust. I saw the same fear and uncertainty that was churning in my own gut. He looked just as lost as I felt. Was it just the storm? A mistake? My carefully constructed facade of nonchalance shattered into a million pieces. The truth came out, a ragged, vulnerable whisper. I thought you thought it was a mistake. You were gone when I woke up. You were, so quiet. A wave of something, relief, pain, understanding, washed over his face. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw, letting out a long, shaky breath. Leo, I woke up this morning and I panicked, he admitted, his voice strained. I lay there, next to you, and I completely freaked out. Freaked out. The word was a punch. So I was right. Not because of you, he said quickly, his eyes pleading with me to understand. Because of me. I don't do that. I don't let people in. Not like that. It's been a long time. And it felt real. And that scared the hell out of me. I went out to check the roads, but really I just needed to get my head straight. I thought I'd come back and you'd be gone. I thought you regretted it. We were two idiots. Two terrified, hopeful idiots, sitting in a truck, projecting our own fears onto each other. We had both retreated, both assuming the worst. We had almost let the silence win. No, I said, my voice shaking but clear. I didn't regret it. I was scared. I thought you were just being kind to the weird, lonely guy from the beach. A real smile, the first one I'd seen all morning, finally broke through his worried expression. It was like the sun breaking through the clouds. You are not the weird, lonely guy, he said softly. You're the quiet, interesting guy. And I'm the loud, lonely guy who didn't know how to talk to you. The confession was so simple, so honest, it broke something open inside me. All the tension, all the fear, it just drained away, leaving behind a fragile, trembling hope. So what do we do now? I asked, the question hanging in the air. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his gray eyes searching mine. Then, he reached over and shut off the engine of my car, plunging the lot back into silence. He turned off his own truck. We stopped being idiots, he said. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a single, worn brass key on a simple metal ring. He pressed it into my hand. My skin tingled where he touched me. What's this? I asked, looking down at the key. It's for the cabin, he said, his voice steady now, sure. So you don't have to wait for your car to die and a storm to come over. The gesture was so much more than a key. It was an invitation. An act of trust. It was a promise. A tangible symbol that this wasn't just a one-night fluke. It was the beginning of something. Something real. I closed my hand around the key, the cool metal pressing into my palm. Okay, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Okay, Julian. He leaned across the console, and this time when he kissed me, there was no fear. No hesitation. It wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer. It was a recommitment, a promise made in the clear, bright light of morning. The beach is different now. I still go there, but I'm no longer alone. Sometimes Julian comes with me, and we sit in a comfortable silence that is a world away from the lonely quiet I used to seek. His presence isn't a disruption anymore, it's a harmony. A bass note to my melody. More often, we go to the cabin. I have my own coffee mug there now, sitting next to his on the shelf. My book is on the nightstand next to the bed. I've helped him sand and restain the porch. I've learned the groan of the floorboards, the particular way the wind whistles through the pines. It's not just his space anymore. It's become ours. We make coffee together in the morning. The quiet domesticity of it is something I never knew I craved. The simple act of him handing me a mug, our fingers brushing, no longer sends me into a panic. It's a small, familiar comfort. A reminder that I am here, and he is here, and we are together. We sleep in the same bed, and I no longer wake up with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I wake up to the warmth of his body next to mine, the steady rhythm of his breathing. The morning after dread has been replaced by a quiet, profound sense of peace. A sense of coming home. Looking back, my old life feels like a story about a different person. A man who lived behind glass, observing the world but never truly touching it. I built my routines like a fortress to protect myself from the risk of being hurt, of being seen. I thought solitude was safety. Julian was the storm I didn't see coming. He wasn't just a plot twist in my quiet, predictable narrative, he was a hurricane that tore the whole book apart and forced me to start writing a new one. A better one. He crashed into my life and showed me that the silence I craved wasn't peace, it was emptiness. The quiet I have with him is different. It's a shared silence, full of unspoken understanding and a deep, abiding connection. He taught me that real strength isn't about being self-contained or invulnerable. It's about having the courage to be seen, to be known, to be scared and to reach out anyway. I went to the beach that day looking for silence, and instead, I found a voice. Not just his, but my own. Have you ever had a stranger completely change your perspective on everything you thought you knew about yourself? Let me know about your own unexpected encounters in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more chapters from my life.